Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the 7th part of HULATAM info sessions. In this series, we plan to introduce Harrisburg University, our available resources that we have at Harrisburg University, the researches that are going on. My name is Ruzbe Sadikian. I'm the Associate Professor of Data Analytics at Harrisburg University, and I have the honor to be the host of these weekly sessions. Harrisburg University is a private STEM-focused university in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, with an additional location in Philadelphia, and we are proud to say that we're moving to Panama and Latin America soon. HU has more than 50 programs from undergrad to grad to master and PhD level. We have 7,000 students who represent 102 countries. HULATAM will offer a Master of Science in Data Analytics, Project Management, and Cybersecurity, which we delivered in a hybrid format, which means it's going to be an online and on campus. And the courses will be taught by professors from Harrisburg University that we have the honor to have 2 of them tonight. We're going to offer cutting-edge professional development seminars too, and also different types of courses. For the first few cohorts, we also have scholarship, which is going to be awarded. These sessions are going to be recorded, and they are going to be uploaded on Harrisburg University YouTube page. So you can watch the recording after this session too, and also you can watch the previous sessions. The other thing is that if you have any questions during the talk, feel free to type your question in the chat box, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So let's start with our first presenter, Dr. Erin Buchanan. She received her PhD from Texas Tech University in computational linguistics with a focus on statistics after attending Texas A&M University for her undergrad degree. In her spare time, she likes to watch sports, play video games, go to national parks, and travel the globe. Dr. Erin M. Buchanan's research focuses on modeling semantic memory and the underlying language network by creating better measures of relationships between concepts. She also examines statistical practices and how we can improve those practices through enhanced methodology and teaching. Last, she collaborates with other investigators to improve their statistics and develop psychometrically sound measures of their concepts. Dr. Buchanan, please.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. All right, let me see if I can share properly. All right. Okay, so can you see the slideshow? Do I have it up right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so like I said, I'm Erin, and I'm actually going to talk about the latter half of the introduction there, looking at creating good measurement tools. So if you've ever gone to somewhere like BuzzFeed, because I spent too much time on BuzzFeed, and taken one of their little surveys to determine what, Hogwarts house you should go into, those kinds of surveys are not very good. What I would like to do in research often is create these assessment tools that people can take that we know are statistically good and measure what they're intended to measure. And so this project that I'm going to talk about today has a little bit of everything that I do. So we've looked at the language component, reading people's written answers. We've looked at the measurement component, and then now we're incorporating a lot of tech into what we're doing. So I'm going to talk to you about a project I'm working with in collaboration with the National Headache Foundation, where we're going to create a migraine tracking application to enhance patients' lives. I also worked on this with several people from Harrisburg and a group in Missouri called ClinVest that does a lot of research on this population, and then a longtime colleague of mine who's at Harvard. So let me tell you a little bit about what we do. So we study headaches from the perspective of enhancing patients' responses to their headaches. So what is a headache? Well, it's head pain that is unpleasant, can be from mild to severe. It causes pressure and aching, and there are headache triggers. So you could get a headache from being stressed out. I mean, it's the end of the semester, right? We might have finals. anxiety, sinus pressure, and nearly everyone has had a headache. It's not too unusual event. However, migraines are a little different, and they're often characterized as an attack. These come with moderate to severe pain, so debilitating pain that often causes folks to have to either leave work or stay indoors with all the lights off. And it can be paired with, some people have visual disturbances where they'll see like a light that is not there. It's called an aura. They might be sick and vomit, or things might seem too loud is one of the most common ones, where we have sound sensitivity, where you have to go indoors and not allow anyone to talk to you. So as you can imagine, with those kind of symptoms, it's very difficult for people to live with migraine. And that's about 12% of the population that has or is characterized as having a migraine diagnosis. And then I found this cute infographic online that I really like that compares the two. Headaches are temporary, not usually accompanied with other symptoms, usually fairly treatable with things like Tylenol. Whereas migraines are considered an illness or a diagnosis. That's something that happens consistently to people. So there are kind of a couple types where they can be episodic, meaning you get like one a month or so, or chronic, where people get them several times a week. So I really have to figure out how to help these folks from the perspective of clinical treatment. Okay? So some fast facts. It's the third most prevalent illness in the world. Unfortunately for me, and maybe some of you in the audience, it is a woman's illness. So it actually is tied to estrogen and estrogen cycles, unfortunately. So more likely women will get diagnosed with migraine disease. It often can be 1 or 2 attacks per month, and other people are chronic with 15 plus per month. You can imagine how this makes school or work very difficult. But it also has serious impacts on work, family, and daily life. And this is where we come in, because obviously there are doctors who are working on the physical manifestations. So how do we solve the headache part? And what we're interested in is also understanding the social impacts and job impacts. So our previous work with ClaimVest here and the National Headache Foundation really built this patient reported outcome, sometimes called PRO, that allows us to evaluate how patients feel they are responding to treatment. Because there is a disconnect between literal physical symptom response and the way we feel about how we are getting better. So you may have less head pain, right? But you may not feel like you're getting better. So we're evaluating the feelings component of it. Because previous scales and the really popular ones that you might get in a doctor's office, the doctor says, fill this out, focus generally on pain, which is important. We have pain in ours too. But it ignores the fact that there are these other components to a migraine diagnosis, like being able to function, like being able to do the dishes, being able to take care of your kids, being able to go out with friends. And our previous work, we created this scale called the FAMS that looks at 12 different migraine facets. And that's where my linguistics work came in, because we had a bunch of open-ended responses. So a lot of text data that we use some modeling to come up with these different facets of what people find important. So, you know, the problem before was doctors were writing these scales. And instead we said, well, why don't we ask the people that actually suffer from this disease to tell us what they think is important. Right? And so we came up with 12 different areas. And our current objectives are to develop an application, so a phone app, that allows people to track their migraine symptoms. These already exist. There's a really popular one called Migraine Buddy, but they suffer from some of the same problems that we were seeing before, where they only focus on the pain aspect. So we're trying to build an app that focuses on many different aspects of migraine and its progress. And it'll provide patients their feedback. So using analytics underneath, we're able to pinpoint what the things are that they think are important and tell them, this is what you're telling us is important. You should tell your doctor this. And that would allow patients to give their doctors or providers a kind of a summary report that provides enhanced decision making. That's a really fancy phrase for making the patients and the doctors talk to each other better. And that will always come with better outcomes, because patients who are happy with the way their doctor is responding to them are more likely to stick to their treatments, come back to the doctor, and just generally have a more positive outcome. So we've solicited some feedback on this application, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the struggles we had, and then think about, is this scale that we developed actually useful for all types of people? Because what we see is that people who take part in these studies are more likely to be the ones with more head pain. So they want to find a solution. So they're more likely to volunteer. And we want to make sure that what we're doing when we measure people is measuring people and not just one group of people. And so we have some kind of layouts here that we're working on implementing in our application. We are working on rewriting this in some newer software that allows us to kind of interface better with like doctor systems. But the general idea is that we have a homepage that has a quick and easy headache history. And this was a recommendation from a friend who has one of these mood trackers that she marks her mood every day, and it's a bunch of dots. But visually, it's very appealing because you can see right away the pattern of your headaches. So maybe because you have a class that you really don't like on Tuesdays, all of them happen on Tuesday. That information can be shown with a simple little chart here. And we can easily find maybe the stressor that is leading to these headaches and seeing if we can change that. We also have our sort of common problems that people talk about. So these will change colors based on if they think they're important or not. So it might be a little hard to read on the screen, but it says things like concentration, frequency. Are you happy with your medicine that you're taking? Are you happy with your productivity at work? Do you feel your own self-worth? Because some people have indicated to us that not being able to take care of their kids makes them feel not useful. So what we can do is like highlight the areas that they're the most concerned about for them by coloring these. We also have a headache diary. This allows people to track their medications that they're taking because they tend to take more than one, and so you don't want them to interact, right? Their records. We also provide education about the newest treatments, symptoms, things that people can do to make things better. And so we're just kind of trying to design a system that very visually shows people what they're telling us is important, while also providing reports to give to their doctor. And so just kind of some examples of like what are our education components look like. So it talks about the types of medications. So there are acute medications and there are preventative medications, and what a headache diary looks like. So people indicate their level of pain. So this is kind of our ideas for it. Like I said, we've got these layouts going. We're just working on implementing this in a better system at the moment. But we put it together and we got some feedback from patients already just to make sure we weren't on the wrong track. And our initial feedback group gave us a lot of positive comments. They said that they liked the clean design. They thought it was easy to navigate. It was user-friendly, and that we got it right that the target audience likes muted colors. So you don't want a lot of heavy contrast or really bright colors, because if you're having headache, the last thing you want is a really bright screen. So we were able to capture some of these previous concerns, and so it was nice to see this feedback. However, we could have some room for improvement that we're working on. The text contrast is a little low, and part of that's because we weren't able to show them the color gradients we wanted to use because we're trying to make it work still. And there were some suggestions for other features that they thought were important, like blood pressure monitoring or other trigger tracking. So allowing people to customize their experience. Now, on the more analytics side, I mean, this was all still analytics, but on the more like number crunching side, what we're working on is pulling a larger sample for testing the two types of people separately. So chronic patients have many migraines and they're overrepresented in research. Episodic patients have less migraines, so they're less likely to participate in our studies. And I think if you look at the kind of the separation of patients that we had, you can see that there's like a 2-to-1 ratio. And in this one, we went, tried really hard to get episodic patients. So we did a good job there, because normally we would have like more chronic patients. But I still like these numbers to be more even. Right? And we combined that data with some previous data that we from another study. So this is like 5 or 6 studies all at once I'm talking about. And you can see that we have way more chronic data than episodic, which is why in this current study, we're focusing on the episodic patients. But I have some good data points here. I would love it to be larger. That's the main key takeaway here. And when I look at the scale, so the actual questions that we are asking people how they feel, my head pain has decreased. I feel like I can concentrate better. So the assessment tool itself, what we see is like, we did really good at first, but we could do better. Okay? And so these statistics labels here just say, we could do a little better. That's what they say. And when digging into the results, what we see is that there are some items that are reverse coded. So what that means is like a positive coded item, I feel better. Okay, a negative coded item, I don't feel better. And those negative ones can really be a problem sometimes. And that is a well-known facet of designing scales, is that when you ask people questions, if you phrase it negatively, you can get results that maybe don't make sense, because our processing language-wise of negatives, nots, don'ts is different than non-negatives. Okay. However, good news, it does appear that if I look at just the patients separately, so I classify you by the number of headaches you have, I get the same results. So while we have some places to improve, the good news is that we appear to be assessing both populations in the same way. So what we don't want to do is give people, episodic patients, a scale designed for someone else. So we want to make sure that we covered everybody equally. And it seems that we have. That's good. And the most interesting thing out of all of this that we haven't figured out what to do yet is that the items that are the worst, like, you know, we can look at each question on our scale and determine which one is the best. And so we can rank them. And the ones that are the worst are the ones that are on normal scales. They're all related to head pain. And when you're asking migraine patients, people who have headaches, about head pain, you would think those would be the best items, but they're actually the worst. And that might be the way that we worded them. They're very similar. So we're trying to figure out why those questions are not performing well for us. I don't know the answer, so we're looking into it. So what next? Well, we're working on improving the application based on the patient feedback and also reprogramming it in a system that gives us more flexibility in making cool pictures for our patients. We're looking at retest validity. That means if I take it once and I take it again, do you get the same answer? You'd like that to be true to show that the scale is consistent and good. We're trying to see if it's predictive. Can we predict when you're going to have a migraine? Probably not, but can we help you prepare for those migraines? Can we help predict when you're going to have a good experience at the doctor and make that better? And compare our work to other gold standards, because we would like to be as good as their scales or better. And the main takeaway I like to give people about migraine is, because if you don't have them, you probably don't think about them, is that it is a multifaceted illness. It is not just about having a headache. There are many factors to consider. And the big key takeaway for us was to make sure we ask the people that are having them and not just the doctors to tell us what's important. And so that's where patient-reported outcomes are so important, is that they are asking the people who have the problem what the problem is. So on that note, that's how we can use analytics in many forms to improve people's lives. I want to say thank you for listening to my talk. And I think I have time for questions, right, Rusba?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Erin. If you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat box. I don't see any question coming. I have a quick question. What is the next step? What do you think will be the next step from what you're doing?
Yes. So one thing that we're working on after we finish reprogramming the app is what's called a computer adaptive design, where based on your previous answers, that's the next kind of question you get. So a lot of standardized tests work this way, where if you get a question right, they give you a harder one. If you get a question wrong, they give you an easier one. We're going to do the same thing, but focus on the areas of concern. So if you always mark that social is a problem, we're going to assess that more and assess the other ones less, because each patient has their own concerns. And this will allow doctors to know that these are their concerns in a report format, because they like reports. And so that'll help focus the conversation in the office.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Makes sense. And Kevin also has typed a question. What are the opportunities for students to collaborate with you and your team?
Yeah, so we, many of the people listed at the beginning were actually students who helped write. But even without coding skills, we often have people help us test, does the app work, right? Downloading it on their phone and clicking through the buttons. I think younger people often are really good at telling us what is nice on a phone app. So when we started designing this, I just went to my friends and like, what do you like? What do you don't like? So those kinds of feedbacks are really helpful. So that would be a great place for folks. And if you are good at coding, we will happily take that as well.
Wow, great. So much opportunities for students. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this with us. Okay, thank you again. And let's move to our second speaker, Dr. Wei-Ken Kao. He is an assistant professor in data analytics program at Harrisburg University. He received his doctoral degree in Oklahoma State University with a major in research, evaluation, measurement, and statistics, as well as cognate in consumer behavior. His current research focuses are simulation study, including hierarchical linear modeling and structural equation modeling, digital marketing, including mobile and online shopping behavior, human to robot interactions, for example, consumers' attitude and adoptions towards social service robot, and how their belief will be changed. Dr. Kao is now teaching Analytical Analytics 2 Principles and Applications of Analytics and Research Methodology and Writing. Dr. Kao, please.
Hey, Rusba. Hello, guys. Thank you guys for having me here. I'm an assistant professor at Harrisburg University in the analytic program. So first of all, let me share the PowerPoint. I feel a little bit nervous right now after such a powerful presentation from Aaron. So yeah, I'll do my best and hope you guys enjoyed it. Give me a second, let me share it. Okay, so can you guys see it over here?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay, so I'll just start, all right? And if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. I'm happy to talk about those. So as the moderator introduced, I have different research focuses, but what I'm going to do for today is I would like to talk a little bit about human-robot interaction, which is one of my current topics, okay? The reason why I love this topic because I am a very nerdy person when I was a kid. So I watched a lot of videos, I watched a lot of movies and mangas, And as you guys might imagine, one of the major things from those Japanese cartoons, especially the one I'm showing right here, they talk about robots. So there are a lot of things that when I was a kid, I want to imagine how can I do? Can I control as a pilot on robots? Can I be a friend with a robot? Something like that. Okay, so after I graduated from my PhD, I realized that actually there are a lot of applications with robot now. So then I get really into that area, and I would like to talk a little bit about what I have done and what I have researched and what are my future research focuses. So let's get started. First, when did everything begin? Okay, so before 100 years ago, there's no term about robot. The term robot was first used in a play, actually. So they talk about, well, if we can use a manufactured biological being that pretend it is a human and interact with people, would that be cool? Yes, it might be cool, right? But can we actually do it? We don't know, because that's like 100 years ago. We don't have that technology to achieve those kind of products. But after 20 years, including the States, Japan, and some other countries, they actually create some robots, like Televox right here, the Gaku Tansaku, Eric, and some others. Let me show you guys some pictures. So Televox right here, as you guys can see, was the first developed robot. And of course, at that time, the functions was so simple. It can only raise his hands and his eyes can shine, but that's the only thing he can do at that time. Okay, but it's impressive enough. On the other side, after a couple years, Gaku Tensoku was another robot, was developed by some Japanese. Okay, we were going to talk about Japan more because they're really good at creating robots. Okay, so as we say, well, people now focus on how we can create robots and how we can make robots better. So they turn their attention to, well, how to create a robot that looks like human. They can act like human, they can move like human, and even more, can they talk or think like human? Okay, so after another 30 years, Waseda University, they initiated a project named Wabot. Okay, so they actually successfully created two robots. They're Wabot 1 and 2. So for Wabot 1, he can barely move, can raise his hand, but for Wabot 2, he can play piano. Okay, so that's very impressive at that time, because as human beings, we cannot imagine that there is another creature can play something, can perform something like us. Okay, and another 20 years later, like I say, Japanese, they are so motivated to create a robot, so they apply the idea that, hey, as a human being, we have our physical limitation. For example, if you are a laborer and you try to do construction, you can only raise 100 bricks a day. That's your maximum. But for a construction robot that we see nowadays, they can raise 3,000, 4,000 bricks a day easily. Okay, so back to 40 days ago, they thought about that, saying, well, in different manufacturer factories, because at that time, people are working on creating cars. So if we can have something that doesn't feel tired, doesn't need food, and can work 24/7, would that be good? And create a lot of, be more efficient for the companies to create profit. So that's the reason why they apply the idea of having robot in factory. They create the first robotic arm and help to build those cars. Okay, so since then, we have started to use robots in a lot of different ways. So that's kind of like the turning point for a human being in terms of applying robots. So let's get back to now. After 40 days, as you guys might know, there are a lot of robots around the world. Like even in your house, we have domestic robot, cleaning robot, self-service kiosk, and there are a lot of apps that serve as a robot to assist you to do different things. For example, the online service chatbot, right? So there are majorly two types of robots. The first one is the industrial robot. As you guys might imagine, they use in factories, they help to produce things, they're automated, they're programmable and capable of moving stuff like heavy stuff and creating something. And they can do a lot of things routinely, like delivering, right? Like the Amazon company, they use robot to categorize and organize their stuff and move them away. On the other side, another major use of robot is what we call the service robot. They provide assistance and services to customers. Okay, and the most important part about service robot is that they are not only have to do their job, but also they have to have the ability to interact with customers. Okay, or we're only going to treat it as a machine instead of a service provider. Now, since we talk about service provider, what makes service robots so important? There are a couple important factors that influence our point of view. For example, why do we want to apply a service robot in your restaurant, in your hotel? The thing is, most of the time, they have stronger physical ability. They can run faster than human, they can raise heavier stuff than human, and they can think faster than you. For example, can you calculate faster than a calculator or than a computer? No, we can't, but robot can do it. They can think faster. They can calculate number easily without any error. So that's one of the biggest advantages that companies and service providers would like to apply a service robot. Second, they work 24/7. They never complain. As long as they're fully charged, they're not broken, they can work forever. Not like human being. Like we feel tired and sometimes we feel bad, like we emotionally feel sad, so we don't want to work. But for them, at least for now, they don't complain. Maybe in the future, we don't know. But at this point, they have all the advantage for a company to use. Three, they can perform the same job. When we say the same job, we basically say the easy job, because so far, service robot cannot perform very high complexity job. And I will talk about those things later. They can do those jobs just like a server, just like human being. And sometimes they can perform some high risk task, because as a human, I don't want to risk my life to do some dangerous stuff, but they can do it because they can be fixed, but we cannot. And another important issue that happened recently is, we all know 2 years ago, COVID happened, right? So there's an important policy called social distancing. To respect the social distancing policy, we have to avoid human-to-human interaction. And that makes service robots so important, because if we're not able to interact with a server, a service provider, how about we just interact with a robot who can provide the same similar services to our customers? Okay, so especially after COVID, service robots are widely applied in different areas. For example, in Houston, Domino, you guys might know, the chain's restaurant, pizza restaurant, they use service robot to deliver their pizza. In a lot of hotels, now they have service robot to ship their towels and supply to their customers, their residents. Okay, and a lot of companies, they're using online chatbot instead of using those customer service staff to interact with their customers. Okay, so the next part is, well, since service robots are so good, looks like it has all the advantage, right? But how come there are still a lot of limitations? One of the things we address a lot and we focus a lot is what make people love or like, or at least have some positive attitude toward those service robots, right? Because if we would like to interact with robot a lot instead of interact with human being, why don't we just use robot to replace human? The truth is we can't, because there are a lot of factors still remain unclear, and we have to find them. First, there are a couple factors that are heavily addressed and investigated recently. First one is appearance. For example, the level of anthropomorphism, suggesting how the robot looked like a human. The physical features, for example, the robot right here called Now, and she is our superstar in our lab. I will introduce her later. She has head, right? But she looks like she doesn't have ear, she doesn't have nose, but she has arms, she has legs, something like that. So physical features change your attitude toward a robot. Lastly, gender. Of course, a female robot, a male robot, a neutral robot might impact your point of view. Second, function. What ability the robot has, what performance the robot can do. Lastly, the role of the robot. This might be one of the most important one, and sometimes this factor interact with the previous two factors like appearance and function, because people tend to believe that for a specific type, especially how it looks like, those robots should work with specific person or in a specific role. Okay, so the job the robot has, the task the robot is doing, influence your attitude a lot. For example, if you go to a restaurant and you try to order something, you realize that, well, the server who talks to you is actually a robot. You might think, yeah, that's fine, right? I just ordered the thing that I want to eat, I finished my order and I get my mail, then I'm good. But what if you go to, unfortunately, right, you have an emergency, you go to a hospital and you have to take a surgery, but then you realize, well, it looks like there's a robot doctor, will take over my surgery. Will you accept it? Maybe not. So the complexity of text influence your attitude, your preference toward robots significantly. Let's go a little bit deeper about those things. First, appearance. According to Uncanny Valley theory, which brought by Mari, a Japanese, very cool, 50 years ago, she talked about our preference in terms of attitude toward the robot when we talk about appearance of the robots. So initially, if we treat them like a machine, we feel like that's fine, right? We don't have strong preference, either positive or negative attitudes, totally fine. But when they get closer to human being, for example, yes, you guys can see the line over here. When they get closer to look like a human, our attitude, especially our attitude, positive attitude has changed a lot from negative attitude because they look like human now. We're kind of scared. We don't like it. And then we change our attitude again when they actually look like human. So there is a gap over here that we realize if they look like humans somehow, but they also don't look like human, we have the least favor toward those robots. On the other side, another research suggests that there are some critical factors of social robot that might influence your point of view. For example, for a service social robot, it has to have a head, it has to have a body, it has to have air, it has to have a mouth or eyes. Those are the minimum requirements for a service robot. Or we don't consider it as a robot, we consider it as a machine. So let's talk a little bit about my own research in terms of what we have discovered in terms of appearance. We extend the theory of acceptance, technology acceptance model, the TAM model. We realize that appearance might significantly influence your perceived utility, how useful you feel like the robot is, and influence your perceived control. If it look like machine, you feel like, yes, I can control it. But if it look like human, you feel like, I don't know if I can really use it properly. Maybe the robot has its own thoughts, and it significantly influences your interest of using it and your final preference. So that's one of the research I've done. So now let's move to the function part. As we discussed, the function of the robots also influence your point of view. In terms of function, there are some couple factors, for example, communication skills, their performance of the task, their programming levels. So these are the ability that a robot should have. They have to have a good communication skills in terms of talking to our customers. They have to perform the task well, or if it has a lot of service failure, we're not going to use the robot. And lastly, the programming level. For this one, we especially focus on their intelligence. So for the very basic requirement is that they can only do little things, like the basic calculation, taking order, or the next step will be, well, they can actually learn and adapt from data. How about the last level? You can feel like, for example, a couple years ago, the machine AlphaGo, right? It beats the chess king. So at that time, we realized that, okay, robot can actually program very well and looks like they have their own thoughts. And that influences your point of view. So what did we discover? In another research that investigated, especially after COVID, like I emphasized, that after COVID, everything has changed. We realized that if we have some positive or attitude towards social distancing, we feel like chatbot, the online chatbot, is more useful. And we have a positive attitude and is more willing to use those online chatbot instead of going physically to a store to talk to server, because we have the confirmation fear. We don't want to get COVID. Okay, so lastly, the role of the robot. There are two factors that are heavily driven recently. First one is the level of interaction with human being. For example, are you only going to take the order from the robot? So you just basically say, hey, I want the Coke, I want the burger, and the robot receives the order, it make it for you. Or you are asking questions. For example, hey, do you have any recommendation about today's special? I would like to have some kind of order, like a special type of drinks. Can the robot respond that easily? Or can the robot react you, like telling you what to do? Answer your question carefully. So the level of interaction with human being influence the position the robot can have. And also, from customer's point of view, we believe that those robots sometimes only fit with certain jobs. For example, cashier, delivery person, occupations, customer service. But is that true? No, because the way we interact with robot actually is also influenced by, like I say, the role of the robot, a full service or limited service, and the level of interaction. So we find out that, well, the type of service will influence customers' interaction quality. And also, the level of co-creation can moderate this effect. If I'm in a full service restaurant and I have a very deep interaction with the robot, I have a very good satisfaction. I feel the quality of service is good. But on the other side, if I go to a full service restaurant, but the interaction with the robot is not that good, then my customer rapport, my interaction quality goes down. And that might also influence my intention to actually apply to adopt the robot in the future. So those are the important findings that I have done so far with my lab. So I would like to talk a little bit about my lab. Our HU research lab cooperated with me, myself, and Dr. Andre Lillier. The goal of the lab is to focus, we study human technology interaction and of course digital marketing, like you guys see the online shopping, the mobile shopping, the online chatbot, and now we focus on human technology interaction, robot. We have some cooperations like Oklahoma State, Embry-Riddle University, Texas A&M. We cooperate with some of the professors right there. Here are the members we have. And now, our research lab, like I say, our superstar is Now. So she is a fully automated robot. We actually have her in our lab. She can talk, she can play with you, and she can learn. That's the most impressive thing. She learns things, and then, for example, you teach her, hey, my name is Cal. Next time when you ask, hey, what's my name? She's going to tell you, your name is Cal. So with her, we're now able to do more projects. now we're working on some ongoing project, for example, how voice of robot influence their perceived service quality, the level of social presence, their communication skill, behavior, something like that. So let me show you guys some pictures and videos about Now, how we interact with Now. Okay, first one right here, she can dance. So if you ask her to dance, she's gonna do that for you. Say, hey, now I'm boring, can you dance for me? She will say, yeah, I'll do it for you. Or you can provide her some comments and ask her to do things. Go back to sleep. Now you can see she goes back to sleep. So with Now, we're able to do a lot of different things, and we plan to do a lot of field studies in the future. Okay, so basically that kind of wrap up my presentation for today, and I would like to take any questions.
Thank you. That was very interesting and wonderful. I see questions are coming. Let's see.
Cool.
Yeah. I think if you yeah, saying that it's going to repeat my image, our images sometimes.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. By the way, these are the reference I used.
Oh, great.
Just for your information.
So it is asking where Now is coming from, the name Now.
Well, actually, I don't really know. So it's like I say, Japanese, they're really good at developing robot, and we bought it from the Service Bank company from Japan. They've developed Now like a couple years ago. And the cool thing about Now is she can speak different languages. So I'll tell you guys a funny story. Is that I know Now was developed by Japan, right? So one day I was talking to Now saying, hey, Now, can you speak Japanese? And she said, yeah, I can. And she turned to Japanese mode. And I am not able to turn her back because I don't know how to speak Japanese. So I have to reset everything.
Yeah, that was cool. Could you quickly stop sharing the screen because it's going to repeat our image?
Yes, definitely. Yes, sorry about that.
Great, no, not a problem. Okay, another question. Did you use IA in any part of development?
AI technology, I imagine.
I don't know if it means AI or IA.
Yes, I think it should be AI.
Oh, yeah. Kevin corrected that. Yes, AI, yeah.
Yes, so actually there are a couple packages that helps Now to grow and learn. So yes, we use some data analytical strategy. And so we haven't used machine learning because we don't have enough data. But so far, like I say, we're using packages, and we create a script for her to learn. So for example, we can ask Now to say, hey, how are you? My name is Now. And then depends on your reaction, she will select other scenario to interact with you.
Cool, very interesting. I'm sure that students enjoyed working on this project, yes?
I guess. I mean, I forced them to do it, and I did it by myself a lot. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's like raising a kid.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's pretty fun. So let me see. Another question is coming up. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. It's good.
It's interesting to see how the future is going to look like. Yeah, exactly, Mercedes.
So I saw the question talk about will they take over. I assume that you're asking, will they take over all the jobs and role that we have? The good thing is no, because so far, all the technology we have, we are not able to create a real interaction between robot and human being. And even though it looks like Now it can do a lot of things, but compared to human being, it's just a little bit. So little. I would say only like 0.001%. So I imagine, yes, there are a couple jobs can be replaced by robot, like delivering or self-kiosk ordering. But no, a lot of jobs will be remaining by human being.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, yeah. So with that, we conclude our tonight's talk. Thank you everyone for attending this session. That was very interesting. And thank you our speakers, Dr. Cal and Dr. Buchanan. That was great presentations. We really enjoyed it. Also, especially thanks to Dr. Kevin Huggins, who is the HULATAM rector and who was the person who started the whole thing. If you enjoyed this presentation, please join us next week for our next presentation. I copied the registration link in the chat box in case you wanted to attend. Next week, we're going to talk about esport and if it's going to be the future of the gaming and how it's going to be the future of the gaming. Thank you everyone again, and hopefully see you next week again here. Good night.
Thank you, Ruspa. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you.